Hi, Mrs. O'Mara.
Hi.
It's good to see you. It's good to
Thank
see you.
you. It's good to see you too.
All right, so we're going to review your home purchase, which was back in December of 2023, right?
Yes.
Okay. What gave you the decision to get out of renting and to look into home ownership? Like, what drove that decision?
Well, first we have to look at what drove the decision to rent in the first place. My husband and I were both from divorced and came into the relationship with near nothing. We had been high school sweethearts, yes, and found each other again later in life. And we were literally building on nothing. We
Mm.
had some furniture that his mother had given us, and it was very little. um, so we were renting and kind of got the bad deal of that. The landowner or the landlord wanted to rent to a friend shortly after we started and came up with some really crazy reasons, like the stove had little bits of food under the burner. It's like we cook every day. And the grass was not doing well. And we'd had un, unheard of storms that year, and it had just turned it into a mud bog. So there's nothing we can do about that. But
Yeah.
she used that to cancel our contract.
Mm.
And so we found another property, someone who was very, very anxious to get renters into their property when it was in a neighborhood, which was perfect because we had two young girls and a teenage boy, and it was room enough for all of us. And over the next 10 years, we had basically filled it with furniture from, friends and garage sales and this and that. And the girls had friends everywhere in the neighborhood. Schools were close. It was a really great process. And we graduated my son, we graduated my second daughter, or my middle child, my first daughter, and my second daughter developed it's an inherited issue, narcolepsy, so she was staying. She took an extra year to graduate just due to the difficulties she faced with that. Great location because we were near everything we needed for her. But then it got to the point where everything stagnated and the view out, the neighbors came and went, and it was just, I missed the view of, near nothingness where you could see 20 miles down the road. And my heart was aching for that. And just to get out of town, one day my husband and I went to a farmer's market, which was about an hour and a half drive away.
Mm.
And we're driving down old country roads, and I'm going, oh, I'd love to live out in somewhere like this. My husband went, nah. And I always tease him, he sounds like Uncle Si from Duck Dynasty when he's like, nah. And I was like, what's wrong with this? And I said, sparse. And he goes, no, too close together. I was
Oh,
like, really? And it just like put this big old heart above my head. And I was like, he wants what I want. And from then on, it was realtor.com and Zillow and all that for my pastimes. And it was a 5-year process just looking. And then my son got in on it. We all talked about building a compound where we were all real close and kind of pooled resources and whatnot. And we thought we found the perfect place, but his brother didn't want to go into it because it was too far from his school systems for his boys. And so it kind of stalled real hard for about 2 years. Our current landlord, the first landlord that we had with that house, had started to sell it to us on contract
hmm.
and had built the down payment into the monthly rent.
Okay.
Well, they had financial issues, so they decided that wasn't fast enough and they sold it out from under us.
Mm.
And I obviously didn't read the contract well enough to realize that, we'd forfeit
It could be done.
anything.
Yeah.
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 And so she had bought it and seemed like a great, great deal with her and everything. And we became friends, per se. But then, another 10 years down the road, she decides that due to financial things, She was ready to move on from the rental market and sell. And she found out we were house hunting, and she has real estate license. So she said, oh, I can help you out with that. And she started showing us houses. And that really got my husband finally fired up and starting to do the things that he needed to do that I'd been on him to do. And he really got excited. So we had shopped around for loans. And I think about our fourth one in, we're just thinking, this just isn't right. Something's not right.
Hmm.
And I started, you know, thinking, okay, well, we wanted somewhere near farmland because I like that 20-mile view.
Yeah.
And if you've ever looked out on a cornfield, it just sways, like they call it the Indiana Ocean. Also, soybean fields. They're just beautiful, velvet
Yeah.
green looking. And we found, I was looking and I was looking and I poo-pooed a few, and my daughter was looking with me, and she's like, well, what about that one? And I said, yeah, well, and I said, look at the landscape. It's all trees. I didn't want to be in trees because it's very buggy, spidery.
Yeah.
But there was big, beautiful dining room to it. And she said, we got to go see this. We pull up the driveway and it was just like, and yeah,
Oh.
covered in trees, covered in trees. Yes, there was daddy long legs everywhere, but they're good. And it was just, and there was a big old barn that in the pictures it looked dirty and dilapidated, and it wasn't. And we walk in to the dining room that was in the picture, and we all just kind of went, yes. We step into the kitchen, and down below the kitchen, the kitchen has this big long countertop, which is one of the things I've really wanted for a long time. I had it in Arizona, and that was my baking countertop,
Yeah.
my prep countertop, because it was so big I could just have the entire thing a mess, and it was perfect. And right below that was, it opened up to the full view of the den, and I was like, oh, I could have grandkids here down below where I can see them and doing all my mess prep.
Yeah.
And it just, the ideas started flooding into what I could do with that property. And I started talking about it. And we were here not for our 15 minutes. We were here for an hour and a half.
Wow.
And the sellers,
A long showing.
yeah, the seller's agent was so here for it. She was just going on and on. She got real personal, in her love for the town really
Yeah.
kind of flowed out of her with the property. My husband really wanted somewhere he could have a little range, but he also really wanted water, and that was the one thing that wasn't here for this property. No little pond, no,
Oh.
and he didn't care. He didn't care. The main property was just on top of a hill, and it's a hike from where we have to drag the garbage and get the mail and everything, but that's good for you too. But down the hill, I can look out my window, and that's kind of the edge of the hill, and it goes down, and there's a little dry creek that runs anytime there's,
Oh.
rain or snow. Can't fish it, but he still enjoys it. And the fact that it is covered in trees and it is covered in 10 years of neglect and overgrowth and everything, it just seems to put this fire in him that he hasn't had in the last 10 years, where he has something to do, and he has
Yeah.
something to do that he can get instant gratification out of, because he can see the job well done. Even if it's only partly done, he's still like, that looks good, every time he's done. And every time we do something on the property, our chairs, when we sit outside, kind of move so we
Mhm.
can view our job well done. And it's just been a journey that has awoken, certain parts of us. And
I'm going to
um
back up for a moment and ask you
mhm,
something. So you mentioned that you had been working with four different lenders before you met
yes.
me.
Hmm.
I don't think I knew that or remembered that, but I do remember how we met. It was interesting because I went and did a presentation about renovation loans to real estate office. I want to say maybe in Fishers. I was out
Mhm.
the northeast side of town and I had done a real estate presentation. And it wasn't anybody in that office who needed my help, but somebody who heard the presentation reached out to your landlord slash realtor and said, "Hey, I think there's a solution for the buyers that you're working with," right? That's how we got connected. Do I remember that
Yes,
right? Yeah.
she did not like the loans I was getting, or the loan quotes I was getting. She was telling me that that's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to do that much in closing. I've never heard of that much in closing, yada yada. And we were explaining to her how it got to that point and why, and she said, "No, you need to find a new lender." And she then reached out to somebody she knew who recommended you.
Okay, so that's how that all happened. I knew we
Hmm.
met through real estate friends, but not,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and then
she had contacted someone within her real estate company because, like I said, she had her license, and they said, "Try this one,"
yeah,
which
and I
was
remember when you found my
fantastic
friends.
because of the condition of the as-is house.
Yeah.
I know that the front door had been so old, and it was probably original to the house, that when you would open and close it, the threshold would go with it.
Hmm.
And you could see underneath the threshold to like the subfloor. I'm
Oh
not sure
goodness.
how, yeah, that was quite the build when we had that done. And so when you started telling me about the Reno loan, and, I was just like, oh my gosh, the whole thing needs so much. Where do I start? What do I do? Your advice was what needs done first? What is the most immediate concern? And I thought security.
Yeah.
Security is the most immediate thought because, the front door can be opened whether it's locked or not because the threshold is nothing. It has the two windows on either side of it, side lights, I think they call it, and they would move back and forth when you would jiggle the door. So that was extremely
Hmm.
insecure. And then the garage door, it had the big bow in it to where, you could almost go under it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that critters could get into the house if they wanted to, and I was like, "Oh no,
Oh yeah,
no
yeah.
good."
Without much hindrance. Yes. Yes, we
Well,
did
and there
find
was
some
also
rude
a
ones.
big, huge back deck, and
Mhm.
the boards were completely unsafe.
Completely rotted. It
Yeah.
wasn't just that they were unsafe. And we walked on it, and there was one time when my husband had put his foot down and he didn't go through it, but the board went out from under him.
Oof.
And he was like, "Well, that's not good."
Yeah.
We were going to have to replace the entire thing, and we're very much do it ourselves people
Right. Yeah.
to a degree.
Yeah.
When
So
it
that
comes
we
to
didn't include because
no.
because you wanted to do it yourself, and it was going to be extremely expensive to hire a contractor to do it.
Yes, and we just didn't feel like we needed to put that in the loan because that that's something that can definitely wait.
Yeah.
It was not worth keeping, and it was so huge. It was outside of our needs anyway. So
Yeah.
we just decided, we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see down the road what we want to do with it, but replacing it now was not a necessity at all.
Yeah. So to clarify for the listening audience, you guys elected to just finance the garage door and the front
Hmm.
door because those
Hmm.
were the priorities. And the
Hmm.
other things weren't health and safety or structural in nature. The sellers did come out and remove the deck because it wouldn't have passed
Yes,
appraisal without that. So they did come out
right.
and remove that before closing. And everything else you guys decided you kind of wanted to tackle on your own. So there wasn't no need
Yes.
to, yeah. Yeah. So what's interesting about this project is it wasn't a very big one. I mean, I don't
Mm-mm.
remember exactly how much everything cost, but it couldn't have been, I mean, I'm guessing less than 10 grand
It
for
was
this.
just over 6,000.
So kind of a small project, but
Hmm.
could not have been done without the proper financing.
No.
And we closed that in 44 days. So it didn't take much longer than a standard loan. And I will say this too. I'm going to out myself here. When you first looked at that property and you were using the seller's agent, I was like, oh no, no, no.
I
You need
know.
to have
I
your own
know.
agent But I ended up, as you were talking about her, I cannot remember her name, but I remembered her. And I was like, she was a total sweetheart. So I could totally
Yes.
see her spending
Yes.
an hour and a half with you guys. And she was
Well,
absolutely proud of her little town.
she actually went above and beyond because the seller was very set on getting a specific amount for him, his sister, and his younger brother.
Mhm.
And they didn't want to go below that, which is why they had turned down a couple of other offers to take as is, clean it out, that kind of thing. And as we were going through certain inspections, things were coming up, as
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
And he was very stubborn about it. And
Mhm.
the realtor was like, you know what? I'm getting a good commission out of this. I'll half the repairs with you.
Hmm.
And she did that on the heater, but there was something else. Like some of the GFI switches had to be replaced before they could be passed inspection. And she just went and did it. She just went and got a friend of hers who does electrical, bought the switches, came out here with them. They changed the switches because she's like, I'm not losing this deal.
Yeah. But I can totally see it. Like,
Hmm.
and I will say, I stand by my advice. You want to have your own representation
Yes.
99.999% of the time. But this
Yes.
just happened to be one of those rare moments where the listing agent was a fabulous buyer's, it was dual
Hmm.
agency, but it worked out fabulously.
She did.
She was great. Now I've seen it go the other way a lot of times.
Yes. And I
But
can see that. I could see that. And there were certain things where if we had had an agent to push back on, we might have gotten a little something here, a little something there, or a little more, I don't know, but the transparency with
Mhm.
the agent that we did have, the dual agent, it was it worked for us. I
Yeah,
can see
it was
where it
fantastic.
could go and have gone very badly,
Mhm.
but we were lucky.
Yeah. And it worked out even better because she was local to the area and she was able to help you find a contractor to take care of the doors. So
Yes.
two contractors. Were there two separate contractors?
Well, there was
Yeah, I thought so.
originally,
Yeah.
but being that he was a local guy, he was old and set in his ways and didn't want to do all the paperwork. And she's like, "I'll do the paperwork," and she did. But then he's like, "I don't know, I don't want," and he backed out last minute, and we were like, "Oh my gosh!" So I just went with a brand name overhead doors.
Yep.
I
I
just went
remember
with
opening
it.
doors. Yep.
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 I just went, you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to find a local guy cheaper, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to do it. I want it done right and I want it
Yeah.
done now
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
didn't want the loan to fall through. So we
Yeah.
went ahead and just called them and they jumped right on it and did as fast as we needed them to.
Yeah.
So
Everything went
we,
pretty smoothly, except
Mhm.
let's see, when they delivered that front door, something was wrong or maybe something broke.
The framing that the door was transported in broke and the door swung, or the latch. No, it was the latch that had kept the door shut. You know how they put the safety things on it, and it swung and was hitting the framing as it was traveling, and it put a few small dents in it, which would not have been something I would have at that moment because of the time crunch and because of the fact that we're not those kind of people where it was like, oh, it's got a small scratch on it, send it back. I was like, I called my husband, I put him on video. I said, is this something we can live with? Because I kind of feel like it is. And we agreed it was until we found an issue with where the threshold piece had also cracked. And I said, no. That was something that was already a problem with the original door. I wanted a secure threshold,
Yeah.
and that was what made me say, okay, we'll just gonna have to wait and have it
Yeah.
reshipped.
Yeah.
And it
But it
sat
almost went fine.
outside. It did.
Yeah. I
It
remember you
did.
telling me that.
Yeah, the old door, the broken door was sitting outside, and then when the original door got taken out, it had some really beautiful etched glass in the window, the side lights that my daughter was absolutely set on keeping. So we talked them into, they were like, "Hey, we'll leave it if you want it." And so they did. They left us the old door, and my daughter dismantled it, took the windows out of it, and then we had it hauled off with the rest of the trash.
Aw,
So
how fun is that? So
Weird
it'll,
stories that come up with every little step.
yeah. Yeah, but that's what makes it so fun.
Mhm. Mhm.
And one of the things I love about staying in contact with you is every once in a while you'll send me an email and you'll say, "Oh, I saw this animal or that animal, or I had a beautiful morning." Like, tell me about the wildlife that you're seeing out there.
Oh, you wouldn't believe it. The first couple of weeks, I'm sitting at my desk and there's a window right here to my right. There's windows in front of me. This is another reason for this house, is there are windows everywhere. At first I was taking pictures of all the squirrels because there was a squirrel right outside this window. And it's kind of a drop level. So it's from here, it was a sunken den, and from here the upstairs is only a level and a half off the ground. So here I am sitting with about a 2 feet drop out the window to the ground. So I'm nearly face to face with these critters.
Aw.
Um, but the I'd say it was probably we were here for a month and a half, and our old neighbor had come over to help do some clearing in the yard. He was great. He's like, I was out there. You got turkeys. I said, oh yeah? And he goes, yeah. All you have to do is make a noise and they'll be the first ones to make a noise because they always have to be the loudest or. And not too long after that, we started seeing them with their little bitty babies.
Aw,
And
how
so
cute
we
is
got to
that?
watch the turkeys grow up. I mean, they're not cute, but it was fun anyway.
Yeah,
Um, and about a month after the turkeys, we started seeing the deer.
yeah.
And then we saw that one of them was very wide. And so we're like,
Aw.
oh, that one's pregnant. So we ran down to Tractor Supply and got us a mineral lick. And I said, I don't want to do salt. I want to do something that's good for her. So I did the mineral lick and put that out there. And we have watched 3 babies grow.
Aw, how sweet.
And there's 3 mommies. One of them has a yearling. So she had that one last year because we can tell she's smaller, and she's always with her. So she's not full grown, so we figure she's a yearling. And then we have another mama with 1 baby, and then we have another mama with the twins.
That's
And it's
adorable.
so fun. You hear that they eat a lot of your flowers, and you can't have flowers if you have deer. And we had a beautiful. We've had so much fun discovering all of the flora and the fauna. But I swear this place produces in the spring about 300 different types of flowers.
Oh, it's so beautiful. You got your view.
Mhm.
Got your
Mhm.
view.
Even though I can't see 20 miles down the road, I see something new every day. It's
That's
just
amazing.
fantastic. So,
So my last question for you was going to be, was it all worth it? Would you do it all again? And I did not realize that your journey had been so long, several years in the
mhm.
making.
Mhm.
Um, so
Would
tell us.
I? Yes, absolutely, emphatically, yes. And a lot of people are afraid of the as is houses or, the reno houses. And I'm going to tell you what, yeah, yeah, it's scary. Yeah, it's a lot of work. But I would just say, enjoy the journey, enjoy the search, because that's so much fun. And the more you search, the more you realize what you want and what you don't want. But don't let the project house discourage you. When you find the property, you know it's yours, and that's the one that's meant to be. The rental loan was absolutely perfect, did exactly what we needed. We didn't take too much, so it didn't put us in a hardship down the road. Um, but
Yeah.
so don't be afraid of it. It's been a journey, but it's been a fun one.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. What a great story. We thank you for sharing.
And I have to say, Diamond was fantastic. We absolutely loved working with you. It was just, it was so easy. Something that is one of the hardest things to do in your whole life and one of the most scariest because it's a huge chunk of money. And, you just never know if you're getting it done right, if you're getting it done the best rates and this or that. And you guys, you explained absolutely everything. And when it was passed on to somebody else. They explained what they needed and why, and anytime we had questions, they were answered, and it's just so easy.
Well, thank you. We
Thank
work
you.
hard to take the pain part, to alleviate the pain parts out of the process because it's not fun.
No, and you absolutely did. And there was times when my husband would come in and goes, "Hey, we got a new email from Jennifer. Have you signed those?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, she sent them to me too." So we each got it, and so we were each bouncing off each other, and nobody missed it because it was so thorough.
Yeah. Well, thank
Everything was
you.
just perfectly,
Fantastic.
smooth.
Yeah, you guys
Oh
are great
gosh,
to work with as well. Absolutely fantastic. And you're gonna have to tell Mr. O'Mara I said hello.
I will do that. I will do that.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Now, the legalese required to appease attorneys, compliance officers, and regulators. This podcast is hosted by Jennifer Goldsby, NMLS 591226, VP, Renovation Lending. The topics discussed herein reflect my personal opinion. They do not represent the opinions of Diamond Residential Mortgage Corporation and its management. Discussions about loan programs in this podcast are not a commitment to make a loan. Programs, approvals, rates, fees, and loan terms are subject to loan applications, credit risk, appraisal evaluation, underwriting guidelines, and other lending or qualification criteria and limitations, and are subject to change without notice. Not all products are available in all states. Not all borrowers will qualify. Diamond Residential Mortgage Corporation, 582 Oakwood Avenue, Forest 60045, 847-244-9301. NMLS 186805. For licensing information, go to nmlsconsumeraccess.org/entity details.aspx/company/186805 Equal Housing Opportunity. Diamond Residential Mortgage Corporation is not affiliated with or acting on behalf of or at the direction of FHA, VA, USDA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or any governmental body or agency.